William stood at the large window of his London apartment, watching the rain streak down the glass. His hands were pressed against the cool surface, and his shoulders shook slightly. The phone call he had just received kept replaying in his mind, like a broken record. His father's voice had been cold and distant, just like always. "You're not good enough, William. You never have been, and you never will be." Those words cut deeper than any physical wound ever could. At 28 years old, William had heard variations of this phrase his entire life. His father, a successful businessman, had always made it clear that William was a disappointment. Nothing William did was ever right. His grades weren't high enough, his job wasn't prestigious enough, his life choices weren't impressive enough. William had tried everything to win his father's approval. He had studied hard in school, graduated from university with honors, and landed a decent job at a marketing firm. But none of it mattered. His father always found something wrong, something to criticize. The man seemed to take pleasure in tearing William down, piece by piece. The apartment felt too quiet now. William had been living alone for 3 years, ever since his last relationship had ended badly. Sarah had left him, saying he was too damaged, too broken to love properly. She wasn't wrong. How could someone love others when they had never learned to love themselves? William walked to his kitchen and opened the refrigerator, but nothing looked appealing. He hadn't been eating much lately. Food seemed pointless when life felt so empty. He closed the door and leaned against it, sliding down until he was sitting on the cold tile floor. His phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, his heart jumped, hoping it might be someone who cared. But it was just a work email. His boss wanted him to stay late again tomorrow to finish a project that should have been someone else's responsibility. William had become the office pushover, the guy who never said no, who took on everyone else's work because he was desperate to be liked, to be valued. The irony wasn't lost on him. At work, people walked all over him because he was too kind. At home, his family treated him like garbage because he wasn't successful enough. Couldn't win either way. William thought about his childhood, growing up in a house where love came with conditions. His mother had tried to shield him from his father's harsh words, but she was too weak to stand up to the man. She would whisper apologies to William when his father wasn't around, promising that things would get better. They never did. His younger sister Emma had escaped by moving to another country as soon as she turned 18. She rarely called now. And when she did, the conversations were awkward and forced. William didn't blame her. Their family was toxic, and she had been smart enough to run away from it all. But William had stayed. He had convinced himself that he could fix things, that he could somehow earn his father's love if he just tried hard enough. Years had passed and nothing had changed. If anything, things had gotten worse. The rain outside was getting heavier, now matching William's mood perfectly. He pulled himself up from the floor and walked to his bedroom. The walls were bare, except for a single photograph of him and his college friends at graduation. They all looked so happy and hopeful back then. Most of them had moved on with their lives, gotten married, started families. William had lost touch with all of them. He sat on his bed and opened his laptop, scrolling through social media. Everyone seemed to be living perfect lives, posting pictures of vacations, promotions, and celebrations. William felt like he was watching life through a window, never quite able to participate fully. He closed the laptop and lay back on his pillow. Sleep didn't come easily these days. William would lie awake for hours, his mind racing with all the things he had done wrong, all the opportunities he had missed. He would think about the job interview he had messed up last month, the woman at the coffee shop who had smiled at him but whom he had been too scared to talk to, the invitation to his cousin's wedding that he had declined because he couldn't bear to face his extended family. Fear had become his constant companion. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of not being good enough. It paralyzed him, kept him trapped in a life that felt more like existing than living. He had become a ghost of himself, going through the motions but not really present in his own life. William had tried therapy once, but the therapist had seemed more interested in the clock than in his problems. After 3 sessions, he had given up. He told himself that talking wouldn't change anything anyway. His problems were too deep, too ingrained to be fixed by words. The worst part was the loneliness. William was surrounded by people every day. At work, but he felt completely alone. He had coworkers, but no real friends. He had family, but no real connections. He was like an island, isolated and unreachable. Sometimes he wondered what would happen if he just disappeared. Would anyone notice? Would anyone care? His boss would probably just be annoyed about having to find someone else to dump extra work on. His father might actually be relieved that the family disappointment was gone. These dark thoughts scared William, but they also felt like old friends. They had been with him for so long that he didn't know how to live without them. They whispered to him in quiet moments, telling him that he was worthless, that he would never amount to anything, that he was better off alone. William rolled over and looked at his phone. It was past midnight now, but he wasn't tired. He got up and walked back to the window. The street below was empty except for a few cars passing by. Each one carried people who probably had somewhere important to go, someone important waiting. For them, he pressed his forehead against the glass and finally let the tears come. They had been building up for hours, maybe even years. They fell silently down his cheeks as he stood there in the darkness, feeling more alone than he had ever felt in his life. Tomorrow would bring another day of pretending to be okay, another day of going through the motions. Tonight, in the privacy of his empty apartment, William allowed himself to fall apart completely. The next morning came too quickly for William. His alarm clock screamed at him from the nightstand, forcing him back into a reality he didn't want to face. His eyes were swollen from crying, and his head pounded like someone was hammering inside. His skull. He dragged himself to the bathroom and splashed cold water on his face, trying to wash away the evidence of his breakdown. In the mirror, he looked like a stranger. His dark hair was messy, his skin was pale, and his eyes had lost their spark. When had he become this person? When had he stopped caring about how he looked or what happened to him? William got dressed in the same gray suit he wore almost every day. It was safe, boring, invisible, just like him. He grabbed a piece of toast but couldn't finish it. His stomach felt twisted in knots, and food seemed impossible to swallow. The train ride to work was crowded as usual. William found a corner where he could stand without having to make eye contact with anyone. He put in his earphones, but no music played. He just wanted people to think he was busy, so they wouldn't try to talk to him. A young couple sat nearby, holding hands and laughing at something on her phone. They looked so natural together, so comfortable. William remembered when he used to feel that way with Sarah. They had met in college and dated for 3 years. For a while, he had thought she might be the one who could help him heal from his damaged childhood. But relationships were hard. When you didn't know how to love yourself. William had been constantly worried that Sarah would leave him, and his jealousy and insecurity had pushed her away. She had tried to be patient, but eventually, she couldn't handle his emotional baggage anymore. You need to fix yourself before you can be with someone else, she had said the day she moved out. I can't be responsible for making you happy, William. It has to come from inside you. She was right, but knowing that didn't make it hurt any less. Since then, William had built walls around his heart. It was easier to be alone than to risk being hurt again. The office building was a glass tower that reached toward the sky like it was trying to escape the city below. William worked on the 15th floor in a small cubicle surrounded by dozens of others just like it. His desk was neat and organized, with everything in its proper place. Control in small things helped him feel less chaotic inside. His computer was already loaded with emails when he arrived. Most of them were requests for him to take on extra work or fix problems that other people had created. William read through them all, feeling his stress level rise with each one. He was already behind on his own projects, but he knew he would say yes to everything anyway. Morning, William called his coworker Jake from the next cubicle. Jake was everything William wasn't confident, popular, successful with women. They had started at the company on the same day 5 years ago, but Jake had already been promoted twice while William remained stuck in the same position. Good morning, William replied quietly, not looking up from his screen. Jake leaned over the cubicle wall with a big smile. Hey, a bunch of us are going out for drinks after work today. You should come. There's this new bar downtown that's supposed to be amazing. William's first instinct was to make an excuse. Social situations made him nervous, especially ones involving alcohol where people might expect him to be fun and interesting. But something in Jake's tone made him look up. His coworker seemed genuinely friendly, not like he was just being polite. "Don't know," William said slowly. "I have a lot of work to catch up on. Come on, man. All work and no play, you know? Never come out with us. It'll be fun, I promise." Jake's smile was warm and encouraging. William felt a tiny spark of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe this was his chance to break out of his shell, to try being social again. What was the worst that could happen, okay? He heard himself saying, "I'll try to make it." "Awesome. Meeting at Murphy's pub at 6. You know where that is?" William nodded, though he wasn't sure he did. He'd look it up later. Jake gave him a thumbs up and went back to his own work, leaving William staring at his computer screen with a mixture of excitement and terror. The rest of the day dragged by slowly. William found himself checking the clock every few minutes, wondering if he should change his mind about going out. What would he talk about? What if he said something stupid? What if they all realized how boring and damaged he was? What another part of him was curious. When was the last time he had done something spontaneous? When was the last time he had tried to make new friends or put himself out there? Maybe Jake was right. Maybe all work and no play was part of his problem. At 5:30, William packed up his things and headed to the bathroom to check his appearance. His reflection still looked tired, but he tried to fix his hair and straighten his tie. He wished he had worn something more casual, but it was too late to go home and change. Murphy's pub was only a few blocks from the office, nestled between a coffee shop and a bookstore. Through the windows, William could see warm yellow light and people laughing. His palms started to sweat as he approached the door. Inside, the pub was cozy and inviting. Dark wood tables were scattered around the room, and the walls were covered with old photographs and vintage signs. The smell of fish and chips mixed with the sound of conversation and clinking glasses. William spotted Jake's group in a corner booth near the back. There were about 6 people from work. Some he recognized, and others he didn't. They all looked relaxed and happy, like they belonged there. William stood at the entrance for a moment, fighting the urge to turn around and go home. Jake saw him and waved him over enthusiastically. "William, you made it. Come sit down. We just ordered appetizers." William walked over slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. The group made room for him at the table, and suddenly he was surrounded by his co-workers in a completely different environment. Without the office walls and formal atmosphere, they seemed like different people, more human, more approachable. "What are you drinking?" asked Lisa from accounting. It was a pretty woman with short red hair who had always been friendly too. William at work, though they had never really talked much. "I'll just have a beer," William said, his voice quieter than he intended. "Any particular kind?" the waitress asked when she came over. William realized he had no idea what kinds of beer they served. He rarely drank, and when he did, it was usually alone in his apartment. "Whatever you recommend," he said finally. The waitress smiled and nodded, then headed back to the bar. William felt like everyone was looking at him, judging him for not knowing what he wanted. But when he glanced around the table, everyone was back to their own conversations. "So William," said Tom from marketing, "Jake tells us you're really good with the Johnson account. I've been struggling with a similar client. Got any advice?" William was surprised that anyone had noticed his work, let alone thought he was good at it. He started to share some strategies he had used, and to his amazement, people actually listened. They asked follow-up questions and seemed genuinely interested in what he had to say. As the evening went on, William found himself relaxing slightly. The beer helped, but more than that, he was discovering that his coworkers were actually nice people. They included him in their conversations, laughed at his occasional jokes, and treated him like he belonged there. For the first time in months, William felt almost normal. The evening at Murphy's pub was going better than William had expected, but he still felt like he was acting in a play where everyone else knew their lines and he was improvising. He had managed to contribute to a few conversations and had even gotten some genuine laughs when he shared a funny story about a difficult client. For brief moments, he almost forgot about his usual anxiety. As the group was getting ready to order another round, the pub door opened and someone new walked in. William glanced over casually, then found himself staring. A woman had entered, shaking raindrops from her long brown hair. She wore a simple blue dress and had an easy smile as she looked around the room. "Kate," Lisa called out, waving toward the door. "Over here." The woman named Kate spotted their table and walked over with confident steps. She had the kind of presence that made people notice her without her trying too hard. Her eyes were bright and intelligent, and when she smiled, it seemed to light up the entire corner of the pub. "Sorry I'm late, everyone," Kate said as she approached their table. "The train was delayed, and then I couldn't find this place." She had a warm voice, with just a hint of an accent that William couldn't place. Jake stood up to give her a hug. "No worries, we just got here ourselves." "Kate, this is William from our office." "William, meet Kate. She's Lisa's friend from art school." Kate turned to look at William, and their eyes met for the first time. She extended her hand with a genuine smile. "Nice to meet you, William." When William shook her hand, he felt a small jolt of electricity. Her grip was firm and warm, and she held eye contact longer than most people did. "Nice to meet you, too," he managed to say, hoping his voice sounded normal. Kate slid into the booth across from William, and suddenly he was very aware of her presence. She ordered a glass of wine and immediately jumped into the conversation that was happening around the table. William found himself listening more to her voice than to what anyone else was saying. She was funny and smart, with stories about her work at a small art gallery that made everyone laugh. She asked thoughtful questions and seemed genuinely interested in what people had to say. When someone mentioned a book they were reading, Kate had read it too and offered insights that made William want to read it himself. "What about you, William?" Kate asked during a lull in conversation. "What do you like to do when you're not conquering the business world?" William felt his cheeks flush. He couldn't remember the last time someone had asked him about his interests, and he wasn't sure he had any interesting answers. I read sometimes. I used to paint back in college." "You paint?" Kate's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "What kind of painting? Oils, watercolors, acrylics?" "Mostly watercolors," William said quietly. "Nothing very good. Haven't done it in years." "I'd love to see some of your work sometime," Kate said. "I work with artists all day, and I'm always interested in different styles and techniques." William couldn't tell if she was just being polite or if she really meant it. Part of him wanted to believe that someone as vibrant and interesting as Kate could actually be interested in talking to him, but his inner voice whispered that she was probably just being nice. She would forget about him as soon as the evening was over. As the night continued, William found himself drawn into more conversations. Kate had a way of including everyone in the discussion, asking follow-up questions that made people feel heard. When Jake started telling a story about a disastrous client meeting, Kate laughed at all the right moments and added her own observations. That made the story even funnier. William realized he was studying her, trying to figure out what made her so different from other people he had met. She seemed comfortable in her own skin, in a way that he had never been. She could disagree with someone's opinion without making them feel bad about it. She could be the center of attention without seeming to need the attention. "Earth to William," Lisa said with a grin, snapping him out of his thoughts. "Kate was asking you a question." William felt his face burn with embarrassment. He had been so lost in watching Kate that he had completely missed what she had said. "I'm sorry, what was that?" Kate smiled kindly, not seeming annoyed that he hadn't been listening. "I was just asking about your job. Lisa mentioned you work in marketing. Do you enjoy it?" It was such a simple question, but William found himself pausing to really think about the answer. Did he enjoy his job? When was the last time anyone had asked him that? When was the last time he had asked himself that? "Honestly," William said slowly, "I'm not sure. I'm good at it, I think, but I don't know if I enjoy it. I've never really thought about whether I'm supposed to enjoy work." Kate nodded thoughtfully. "That's fair. A lot of people feel that way. But I think life's too short to spend 40 hours a week doing something that makes you miserable." "What about your job?" William asked, genuinely curious. "Do you love working at the gallery?" Kate's face brightened immediately. "I really do. Every day is different. I get to work with artists, help people discover new artwork, organize exhibitions. Doesn't pay as much as some other jobs, but it feeds my soul, you know?" William didn't know, but he wanted to. He tried to imagine what it would feel like, to wake up excited about going to work, to have a job that fed his soul instead of draining it. It seemed like such a foreign concept, Have you always known you wanted to work in art? He asked. Not always, Kate said, taking a sip of her wine. I actually started college as a business major, believe it or not. My parents thought it would be more practical, but I was miserable. I switched to art history in my junior year, and it was like everything clicked into place. What did your parents think about that? William asked, thinking about his own father's reactions to his life choices. Kate's expression grew slightly more serious. They weren't thrilled at first. They worried about me finding a stable job, making enough money, all the usual parent concerns. But when they saw how much happier I was, they came around. They realized that success isn't just about money. William felt a pang of envy. He couldn't imagine his father ever coming around to that way of thinking. And his family money and status were the only measures of success that mattered. The idea of parents supporting their child's happiness over their income seemed like something from another world. You're lucky, William said quietly. Not everyone has parents who support their dreams. Kate studied his face for a moment, and William had the uncomfortable feeling that she could see right through him. Her expression softened with understanding. No, she said gently. Not everyone does. But sometimes we have to learn to support our own dreams, even when no one else does. The words hit William harder than he expected. When was the last time he had even had a dream, let alone supported it? He had been so focused on trying to meet other people's expectations that he had forgotten what his own expectations were. The evening was winding down now, and people were starting to look at their phones and mention early morning meetings. Felt a sense of panic rising in his chest. He didn't want the night to end. For a few hours, he had felt like a normal person having normal conversations with interesting people. Going home to his empty apartment seemed unbearable. This was really fun, Kate said, as she gathered her purse and jacket. Thanks for letting me crash your work party. You didn't crash anything, Jake said with a grin. You made it better. Same time next week? So everyone started saying there. Goodbye. As William felt his courage building, Kate was putting on her jacket, and in a moment she would walk out of the pub and out of his life. He might never see her again. He might never have another conversation with someone who made him feel interesting and worth talking to. Kate, he said before he could lose his nerve. She turned toward him with raised eyebrows. Would you maybe want to get coffee sometime? The words came out in a rush, and William immediately regretted them. She probably had a boyfriend. She probably thought he was weird. She probably said yes to everyone and then made excuses later. But Kate smiled, and it was the same genuine smile she had been giving him all evening. I'd like that, she said simply. Do you know? Caf Luna on 5th Street. William nodded, though he wasn't sure he did. He could find it. Saturday afternoon around 2, Kate suggested. If that works for you? That works perfectly, William said, trying to keep the excitement out of his voice. Kate wrote her phone number on a napkin and handed it to him. Text me if you need to change anything, she said, and then she was gone. Walking out into the rainy night with Lisa, leaving William. Standing in the pub with a napkin in his hand and hope blooming in his chest for the first time in years. The days leading up to Saturday moved both too slowly and too quickly for William. He found himself checking the napkin with Kate's phone number dozens of times, making sure he hadn't dreamed the entire evening. Part of him kept expecting her to text and cancel, to come up with some polite excuse about being busy or having other plans. But Friday evening came and went without any cancellation messages. William spent Saturday morning in a state of nervous energy that he hadn't felt since his first job interview. He changed clothes 3 times, settling on dark jeans and a blue sweater that Sarah had once said brought out his eyes. He immediately regretted thinking about Sarah, but pushed the memory away. This was about moving forward, not looking back. Caf Luna turned out to be a cozy little place tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop on 5th Street. Through the large windows, William could see mismatched furniture, walls covered with local artwork, and the warm glow of string lights hanging from the ceiling.
Ow.
It looked like the kind of place where people came to read, write, or have long conversations over coffee that had gone cold. William arrived 15 minutes early. Habit he couldn't shake even when he was trying to be casual. He found a small table near the window where he could watch for Kate's arrival. The menu was written on a chalkboard above the counter, offering drinks with names like Morning Glory Latte and Dreamer's Delight.
Oh, yeah?
William ordered a simple black coffee. Not wanting to risk spilling something complicated on himself, he was halfway through checking his phone for the third time when he saw Kate walking down the sidewalk. She wore a yellow sundress despite the cool October weather, with a light cardigan thrown over her shoulders. Her hair was loose around her face, and she walked with the same confident stride he had noticed at the pub when Kate spotted him through the window. Her face broke into a genuine smile. She waved, and William felt his nervousness transform into something that felt almost like excitement. Maybe this wouldn't be a disaster after all. Sorry I'm a few minutes late, Kate said as she approached his table. Bookstore next door. They have this amazing poetry section. It's no problem at all, William said, standing up awkwardly. Should he hug her? Shake her hand? He settled for a small wave and immediately felt foolish. Kate didn't seem to notice his awkwardness. She looked around the cafe with obvious delight. This place is perfect. How did you find it? William felt his cheeks warm. Actually, I had to ask 3 different people for directions. I'm not very good with finding new places. Kate laughed, and the sound made something tight in William's chest loosen slightly. Well, I'm glad you persevered. What are you drinking? Just coffee. Black coffee. It's very exciting, William said, then immediately wished he had said something funnier. Black coffee is underrated, Kate said seriously. It shows confidence. No hiding behind fancy flavors or foam art. She grinned to show she was teasing, then went to order her own drink. William watched her at the counter, chatting easily with the barista about the different tea options. She had a way of making everyone around her feel comfortable, like they were old friends catching up. The barista was smiling and laughing, clearly enjoying their conversation. When Kate returned with what looked like chai tea, she settled into the chair across from William with a satisfied sigh. So, she said, wrapping her hands around the warm mug, tell me something interesting about yourself that didn't come up at the pub. William's mind went completely blank.
What was interesting about him?
His life felt like a series of routines, punctuated by disappointments. He couldn't very well tell her about his father's latest phone call or his ongoing struggle with self-worth. I'm not sure I'm very interesting, he said, honestly. Kate tilted her head to one side, studying him. I don't believe that for a second. Everyone is interesting if you ask the right questions. For instance, you mentioned you used to paint. What made you stop? William considered making up something casual, but there was something in Kate's eyes that made him want to tell the truth. I guess I stopped believing I was any good at it. My father always said art was a waste of time, that I should focus on practical things. After a while, I started believing him. That's sad, Kate said simply. Not the father part. Well, that's sad too, but the fact that you stopped doing something you enjoyed because someone else didn't see the value in it. It's not like I was going to make a career out of it, William said, echoing words he had heard his entire life. So, not everything has to be about making money or building a career? Sometimes things are valuable just because they bring us joy. When was the last time you did something purely because it made you happy? The question hit William like a physical blow. He literally couldn't remember the last time he had done something just for the joy of it. Everything in his life was either obligation or routine. Work, chores, sleep, repeat. I can't remember, he admitted quietly. Kate's expression softened with something that looked like concern. William, that's not living, that's just existing. They sat in silence for a moment, both sipping their drinks. William expected to feel embarrassed about revealing so much to someone he barely knew, but instead he felt oddly relieved. It had been so long since anyone had asked him real questions about his life. What about you? William asked, wanting to shift the focus away from his own emptiness. What do you do just for joy? Kate's face lit up immediately. Oh, lots of things. I take photographs of interesting doors and windows around the city. I collect vintage postcards from places I've never been. I go to free concerts in the park, and make up stories about the other people in the audience. Last week, I spent 3 hours at the Natural History Museum just staring at the dinosaur bones. William found himself smiling as she talked. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and he could picture her doing all of those things. You make up stories about people. All the time, Kate said with a grin. Like that couple over there? She nodded discreetly toward a man and woman sitting near the counter. Hey, she's a librarian who secretly writes romance novels under a pen name. Whoa. He's a veterinarian who plays guitar in a band that only performs at children's birthday parties. They met when his band performed at the library's summer reading program. William looked at the couple, then back at Kate. How do you come up with that? Practice, Kate said. Imagination, and maybe a little bit of optimism, I like to think. Everyone has interesting stories, even if they don't look like it on the surface. What story would you make up about me? William asked, then immediately regretted it. What if her story was boring? What if it was too accurate? Kate studied him thoughtfully for a moment. You're a secret agent disguised as a marketing executive. Your real job is protecting priceless artwork from international thieves. That's why you know so much about business. It's your cover and the painting you used to do. That was actually you creating forgeries to catch the bad guys. William laughed, surprising himself. That's definitely more exciting than my actual life. Is it though? Kate asked. I mean, obviously you're not really a secret agent, but it might be more interesting than you think. You're thoughtful, you're observant, you ask good questions, you listen when people talk instead of just waiting for your turn to speak. That's rarer than you might think. William felt something warm, spreading in his chest. When was the last time someone had said something genuinely nice about him? It's not about his work performance or his reliability, but about who he was as a person. You're very kind, he said. I'm not being kind, Kate said firmly. Being honest. There's a difference. Wow. They talked for another hour, covering everything from favorite books to childhood memories to places they wanted to travel. Kate had been to Ireland to visit distant relatives and had fallen in love with the countryside. William had never been anywhere outside the country, but he found himself telling her about a recurring dream he had about visiting small towns in Italy. You should go, Kate said simply when he finished describing his dream. Maybe someday. William said automatically. Why not sooner? What's stopping you? William started to list all the practical reasons, work, money, responsibility, but Kate waved them away. Those are all just excuses, she said gently. If you really wanted to go, you'd find a way. The question is, do you really want to? Go? Or do you just like the idea of wanting to go? It was another question that cut straight to the heart of something William had never examined. How many of his dreams were real, and how many were just safe fantasies he could have without risking disappointment? When they finally left the cafe, the sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. They walked slowly, down 5th Street, neither of them seeming eager to end the afternoon. This was really nice, Kate said, as they reached the corner where they would part ways. I'd like to do it again sometime. Really? William asked, then immediately felt stupid. For sounding so surprised, Kate smiled. Really, you're good company, William. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. As she walked away, William stood on the corner watching her until she disappeared around a bend. For the first time in years, he felt like maybe, just maybe, his life might be about to change. Over the next few weeks, William found himself living in a strange new world. He and Kate had started meeting regularly, sometimes for coffee, sometimes for walks through the city, once for an impromptu visit to an art museum where Kate explained different painting techniques with the passion of someone who truly loved what she was talking about. For the first time in years, William had something to look forward to. He caught himself smiling at random moments during work, remembering something funny Kate had said, or looking forward to their next meeting. His coworkers noticed the change too. Jake commented that William seemed more relaxed, more present in conversations, but with this new happiness came a familiar fear. William's old patterns of thinking began creeping back in, whispering doubts in quiet moments. What if Kate was just being nice to him out of pity? What if she was getting bored with him? What if she realized he wasn't worth her time? These thoughts became especially loud after their 4th meeting when they had spent an entire afternoon at a small street festival. Kate had dragged him from booth to booth, trying different foods and watching street performers. She had laughed at his jokes, touched his arm when she was excited about something, and seemed genuinely happy to be with him. That night, William lay in bed, replaying every moment, analyzing every word and gesture. Had her smile seemed forced? At any point? Had she checked her phone too often? Was she already looking for an escape? The anxiety built over the next few days until William found himself doing what he always did when he got scared. He started pulling away. He took longer to respond to Kate's texts. When she suggested meeting for lunch, he made an excuse about being busy with work. When she called, he let it go to voicemail and then spent hours crafting the perfect response text. Kate seemed to sense something was wrong. Her messages became more concerned, asking if he was okay, if she had done something to upset him. Each worried text made William feel worse, but also convinced him that he was right to distance himself. If he pulled away now, before she could reject him, maybe it would hurt less. On a particularly gray Tuesday, William was eating lunch alone at his desk when his phone rang. His father's name appeared on the screen and William's stomach immediately clenched. He had been having such a good few weeks that he had almost forgotten about the constant weight of his family's disapproval. "Hello, Dad," William answered, his voice already sounding defeated. "William." His father's voice was cold and businesslike as always. "I've been thinking about our last conversation." William remembered that conversation all too well. His father had called to inform him that his cousin Mark had gotten another promotion at his law firm. The implication had been clear. Mark was successful. William was not. "I've decided it's time you moved back home," his father continued. "Without waiting for a response, this whole independence experiment has gone on long enough. You're clearly not capable of making good decisions on your own." William felt the familiar sensation of the world tilting sideways. "What are you talking about? You're 28 years old, William, and what do you have to show for it? It's a mediocre job, no serious relationship, no savings worth mentioning. Your mother worries about you constantly. It would be better for everyone if you moved back home, where we can keep an eye on you." The words hit William like physical blows. Every insecurity he had ever felt about himself was being voiced by the person whose approval he had spent his entire life seeking. And the worst part was that some of it felt true. What did he have to show for his life? "I have friends," William said weakly, thinking of Jake and the coworkers who had started including him in their plans. "And I've been seeing someone." His father laughed, and the sound was sharp and cruel. "Friends? William, people aren't your friends just because they're polite to you. And as for this woman you're seeing, let me guess. She's out of your league, isn't she? Pretty? Successful? Confident? What could someone like that possibly want with someone like you?" The questions hit their target perfectly. They were the exact same questions William had been asking himself about Kate. His father's voice continued, relentless and cutting. "It's probably just being nice to you, son. Maybe she feels sorry for you. But eventually she'll realize what we've always known, that you're not good enough. She'll leave just like Sarah did, just like everyone does. The only people who will never leave you are your family, and we're telling you to come home." William ended the call without saying goodbye, his hands shaking as he set the phone down on his desk. Round him, the office continued its normal rhythm, but William felt like he was drowning. Every cruel word his father had spoken echoed in his mind, confirming every fear he had been fighting. Maybe his father was right. Maybe Kate was just being polite. Maybe he had been fooling himself into thinking that someone like her could actually care about someone like him. The thought of her eventually realizing his worthlessness and walking away was unbearable. That evening, William sat in his apartment staring at his phone. Kate had sent him 3 texts throughout the day, each one friendlier and more concerned than the last. The most recent one simply said, "I miss talking to you. Did I do something wrong?" William started to type a dozen different responses, but deleted them all. How could he explain that she hadn't done anything wrong, that the problem was entirely him? How could he tell her that he was pulling away because he cared about her too much to let her hurt him? Finally, he turned off his phone and walked to his closet. The back behind clothes he never wore was a box he hadn't opened in years. Inside were his old painting supplies, brushes, watercolors, sketch pads filled with half-finished attempts at capturing the world around him. William pulled out a small canvas and set up at his kitchen table. His hands felt clumsy and unfamiliar with the brushes, but slowly, colors began to appear on the white surface. Painted without thinking about technique or skill, just letting his emotions flow through the brush. What emerged was a storm. dark blues and grays swirling across the canvas, with small flashes of yellow trying to break through the clouds. It wasn't good by any technical standard, but it was honest. It was exactly how William felt, caught in a storm of self-doubt and fear. With only small glimpses of hope trying to shine through, he painted until the early hours of the morning, covering 3 small canvases with different versions of the same emotional landscape. When he finally went to bed, his fingers were stained with paint, and his heart felt slightly less heavy. The next day brought a surprise that would change everything. William was walking to the coffee shop near his office when he saw a familiar figure standing outside the building. Kate was there, wearing a concerned expression and holding 2 cups of coffee. "I brought you your usual," she said when she spotted him. "Black coffee, very exciting." William felt his chest tighten with a mixture of happiness and panic. She had come to find him. Part of him wanted to run toward her, and part of him wanted to run away. "Kate, what are you doing here?" he asked, accepting the coffee with hands that shook slightly. "You've been avoiding me," she said simply. "I don't understand why. I thought we were having a good time together. I thought we were becoming friends, maybe something more. But then you just disappeared." William looked down at his coffee, unable to meet her eyes. "You don't understand? I'm not good enough for you. You deserve someone better, someone who has their life together." Kate was quiet for a long moment. When William finally looked up, her expression was gentle but determined. "William," she said softly, "who told you that you weren't good enough?" The question hit him like a lightning bolt. Images flashed through his mind: his father's disappointed face, Sarah's frustrated sighs, years of criticism, unconditional love. He opened his mouth to answer, but no words came out. Because Kate continued, "The William I know is kind and thoughtful and interesting. The William I know asks good questions and really listens to the answers. The William I know has dreams about traveling to Italy and used to paint beautiful pictures. That William is absolutely good enough for me." William felt tears threatening to spill over right there on the busy sidewalk. "You don't know everything about me," he whispered. "Then tell me," Kate said. "Tell me everything. And the good parts, and the hard parts, and the parts you're ashamed of. Let me decide for myself if you're worth my time." And for the first time in his life, William realized that maybe it was time to stop letting other people's voices drown out his own. William looked at Kate standing there on the sidewalk, her eyes full of compassion and determination, and felt something inside him break open. Not in a painful way, but like a dam that had been holding back years of silence finally giving way. The busy street around them seemed to fade away, leaving just the 2 of them in their own small bubble of honesty. "There's a park across the street," William said quietly. "Can we sit down? This might take a while." Kate nodded without hesitation, and they walked together to a small park with wooden benches overlooking a pond. The morning was crisp and clear, with golden sunlight filtering through the autumn leaves. Other people were around: joggers, dog walkers, people hurrying to work, but William felt like he and Kate were completely alone in the world. They sat down on a bench facing the water, and William took a deep breath. He had never told anyone the full story of his life, not even Sarah, during their 3 years together. No. The words felt rusty and difficult, like a language he had forgotten how to speak. "My father has never said he was proud of me," William began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not once in 28 years. Everything I do is wrong, or not good enough, or disappointing in some way. When I graduated from university with honors, he said the school had low standards. I got my job, he said it was because they needed someone expendable. When Sarah left me, he said it proved that no one would ever want to stay with me." "Yes." Kate's hand found his on the bench, her fingers warm and steady. She didn't say anything, just listened. "The worst part is that I started believing him," William continued, tears now flowing freely down his cheeks. "I stopped painting because he said it was worthless. I stopped trying to make friends because I was sure they would all leave eventually. I stopped believing I deserved to be happy because he convinced me I wasn't worth happiness," William told her about the phone call from his father the day before, about the suggestion that he move back home, about all the cruel words that had confirmed his deepest fears about himself. He told her about his childhood, about watching his sister Emma escape as soon as she could, about his mother's weak attempts to protect him that never quite worked. "The thing is," William said, his voice cracking, "part of me knows he's wrong. But that part is so small and quiet compared to all the other voices telling me I'm not good enough. When I met you, that small part got a little louder. You made me feel like maybe I could be worth something. But then the fear came back, and I was so scared of you realizing I was disappointing that I tried to disappoint you first." Kate was quiet for a long moment after he finished talking. She watched the ducks swimming in the pond, her thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of his hand. William held his breath, waiting for her to say something polite about understanding his situation and then make an excuse to leave. Instead, she turned to face him fully, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "William," she said, her voice fierce and gentle at the same time, "your father is wrong about you. Completely, utterly, devastatingly wrong." She reached up and wiped a tear from his cheek with her free hand. "You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who has survived years of emotional abuse and somehow remained kind. I see someone who was told his dreams were worthless but still has dreams. I see someone who was taught that he didn't deserve love but is still capable of caring deeply about other people." William felt fresh tears starting, but these felt different, cleaner somehow. "You're not disappointing, William. You're not worthless or unlovable or any of the other horrible things he told you. You're a good man who was raised by someone who didn't know how to love properly. That's not your fault, and it's not a reflection of your worth." Kate shifted on the bench, so she was facing him more directly. "I need you to hear this clearly. I don't spend time with people out of pity. I don't pretend to enjoy someone's company to be nice. I'm here because I want to be here. I'm here because you make me laugh and think and feel understood. I'm here because when I see you, I see someone worth knowing." William looked into her eyes and saw nothing but sincerity. For the first time in his life, he tried to really listen to words of kindness instead of automatically rejecting them. "I don't know how to believe that," he said honestly. "That's okay," Kate said with a small smile. "Belief is something you can learn. It takes practice like anything else. Every time that voice in your head tells you you're not good enough, you can choose to question it. Every time someone shows you kindness, you can choose to accept it instead of assuming they have ulterior motives." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the world wake up around them. William felt exhausted from sharing so much, but also lighter somehow, like he had been carrying a heavy backpack for years and had finally set it down. "Kate," he said eventually. "Yes, what you said yesterday about doing things just for joy. I painted last night. For the first time in years, it wasn't very good, but it felt." "How did it feel?" Kate asked when he trailed off. "Like coming home to myself," William said, surprised by his own words. Kate's face broke into a radiant smile. "That's exactly what it should feel like. Would you like to see them?" William asked, then immediately felt silly. "I mean, they're not good. They're just emotional vomit on canvas, really." "I would love to see them," Kate said firmly. "Art doesn't have to be technically perfect to be meaningful. Sometimes the most powerful pieces are the ones that come straight from the heart without filtering through the head first." That afternoon, William invited Kate to his apartment for the first time. He had cleaned frantically that morning, but he tried not to apologize for every small imperfection. Kate walked around his small space with genuine interest, looking at his books, commenting on the view from his window, making the place feel less lonely just by being there. When he showed her the 3 small paintings from the night before, Kate studied them in thoughtful silence. William held his breath, waiting for polite comments or gentle criticism. "These are beautiful," she said finally, and her voice held no trace of false encouragement. "You can see the storm, but you can also see the light trying to break through. It's like a visual representation of hope struggling against despair." "That's exactly what it felt like to paint them," William said, amazed that she had understood. So clearly, Kate turned away from the paintings to look at him. "You have talent, William. Real talent. But more than that, you have something to say. That combination is rare." Over the following weeks, something shifted in William's world. Kate didn't try to fix him or rush his healing process. She simply continued to show up, consistently and without judgment. She celebrated small victories the day he stood up to a coworker who was trying to dump extra work on him the evening. He called his sister Emma for the first time in months, the morning he decided to take a sick day. Just because he wanted to paint, she also didn't try to shield him from difficult moments. When his father called again with more criticism and demands, Kate listened to William's hurt and anger without trying to minimize it or rush him toward forgiveness. She helped him understand that healing wasn't about forgetting the past or excusing his father's behavior, but about learning to trust his own worth despite what others had told him. 3 months after that morning on the park bench, William made a decision that would have seemed impossible just a few months earlier. He booked a trip to Italy. 2 weeks in Tuscany, he told Kate, showing her the confirmation email with a mixture of pride and terror, and going to paint and eat too much pasta and see if those dreams I had were just fantasies, or if they were actually calling me toward something real. Kate's face lit up with genuine excitement. "William, that's incredible. When do you leave?" "Next month," William said. And Kate, I was wondering, would you maybe want to come with me? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility and risk. William held his breath, preparing himself for rejection while also hoping desperately for acceptance. Kate's answer came in the form of a kiss, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, she was smiling so widely that William could see the joy radiating from her entire being. "I thought you'd never ask," she whispered against his lips, as they held each other in William's small apartment, surrounded by paintings that told the story of his journey from darkness toward light. William realized that his father had been wrong about almost everything. He was good enough, was worth loving, and most importantly, he was finally learning to believe it himself. The voice in his head that had criticized and doubted for so many years was still there, but it was no longer the loudest voice. There was Kate's voice, telling him he was worth knowing. There was his own voice, growing stronger every day, telling him he deserved happiness. And somewhere, very quietly but persistently, there was the voice of hope, whispering that the best parts of his life were just beginning. William held back tears no longer. He let them fall freely, but now they were tears of gratitude, tears of relief, tears of joy for a life that was finally, truly his own.